The information discussed in this PILCast episode are merely opinions and do not constitute formal policy or legal guidance of any kind. Hello, and welcome to another PILCast episode, the series where we discuss federal procurement innovation topics in 10 minutes or less. We guarantee it. I'm David Jablonski with the DHS Procurement Innovation Lab, and today I have a special guest with me, Chad Parker from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Happy holidays, Chad. Thanks for joining me today.
Happy holidays, David. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm a contracting officer at USCIS, as David mentioned, and I'm also the Acquisition Innovation Advocate.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Chad, joining me today, for that matter. So today, Chad and I, we're going to talk about coding challenges. Now, these are a type of technical demonstration, part of that show me, don't tell me model. And Chad is going to share with us his experience using coding challenges in one of his recent procurements. But before we get started here, Chad, can you share with us, provide a brief explanation of what coding challenges are?
Of course, David. In a nutshell, coding challenges are a way of avoiding paper-based proposals and reading about firms' capabilities or corporate experience or technical approaches and looking at them more intimately and seeing their abilities to work within our technical environment using our toolkits, our softwares. We give them a problem statement and they solve that problem statement in a certain span of time with the program overseeing that so that we can really get to understand their capabilities beyond what you'd see in a paper-based proposal.
That's awesome. So really interactive process and getting rid of that paper, throwing it right out the window, right, Chad?
Very innovative. In fact, we had exchanges with them in the middle of this dialogue. We threw problems at them in the middle of it. So we give them scenarios, but we might even tweak that scenario in the middle of it just to stump them to see how they handle challenges in a real-time environment.
That's
stuff
awesome.
They would do on the ground here at USCIS.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Chad. Really appreciate it. So now, everyone out there, if you're unfamiliar with what technical demonstrations are, coding challenges are a type of technical demonstration, you can learn about them on our PIL Primer series at FAI.gov, and a link to that for technical demonstrations video can be found right in the description box below. Now, Chad, so this requirement that you used coding challenges for, can you start by let everyone know what it is that your team was buying?
Yeah, so we were buying essentially coders to protect against fraud detection at USCIS. Fraud detection is near and dear to everybody in this day and age. So the importance of it is very significant. It was a Part 16.5 procurement. We used a CIO SP3 IDIQ contract, and it was in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Unfortunately, I don't have the number memorized in my head. We awarded it a little while ago, and it was not a set-aside, or it was a set-aside. In fact, actually, it was a small business set-aside.
Awesome. Okay. And so now, why was this particular requirement important to your office?
Well, fraud detection has been a problem within all government agencies, and this contract is the backbone for what we would deter fraud intrusion at our agency.
That's great. So very important project for your team. Okay. You got to make sure you got this right, and you use coding challenges as part of that process. Very cool.
Yes.
All right, so now we know a little bit about the requirement itself and the far part your team is working in. So can you share this procurement strategy that your team decided to use for this particular requirement?
So the strategy we used was we offered up a code challenge that was essentially, it was asking them to develop a sort of medical application where we would be able to see them and be able to throw questions at them. And we would be able to test that application as well. So as a quick example, if we said, hey, in your system, once you've developed it, I want to look for anybody in Massachusetts who has had this medication prescribed to them, we know the answer that should come out. And based on what they developed, given the data sets that we provided them up front, that we should be able to run their tool when we're done and get the answers that we expect. So it's really like a true problem statement. We should be able to see the answer. And if they don't get it right, well, we know they didn't code it correctly.
That's awesome. And now for these coding challenges, did you do this? I know sometimes we talk about, and we've taught on here, PILCast episodes, phase procurements. Was this a first phase requirement or a second phase requirement? How did that look for you on the procurement itself?
Absolutely. So phase one of this was a multi-phased acquisition. And we did phase one was corporate experience. where we asked them some specific questions that were problematic for our office to really hone in on the answers from corporate experience. We didn't want to get that general tell me about experience based on dollar value or based on experience related to work similar to ours. We really wanted to hone beyond that and understand their capabilities based on certain types of corporate experience, experience coding against fraud, experience coding against hundreds of millions of volumes of pieces of data. So the experience questions were very, very specific. We had about 7 of them, and we kept that response back in the first phase. And paper-based was very narrow, 5 pages.
Got it. Nice, perfect. And then the second phase, and that's where you use the coding challenges itself. So a smaller subset of vendors that you're working with there.
We did an advisory notice to those that were not the most highly rated, which worked well. We actually only had 1 vendor that decided to proceed despite our advising them not to. And in that second phase, we looked at price, obviously, because you always have to look at price. And we also did the coding challenge as well.
Okay, and now how did that coding challenge process work? Just kind of a brief overview of what that process looked like when they actually occurred.
So what happens is we first notify them to show up. They arrive. We give them the problem statement right there, and then they start churning away on that problem statement based on what we've given them. Now, before that, obviously, there's a lot of background government work that takes place, right? We have to establish a GitHub account. We have to put data sets out there. They have to provide us back some information. So there's quite a bit of exchange that occurs before the actual code challenge happens. But once it happens, that's really kind of the nit of it.
Okay, got it. And now you explained earlier, this is very important, that you didn't want to read paper-based kind of documents. As part of it, you really wanted to understand if they could do the work itself. And that's why you had these coding challenges. Now, how did that go? How do they work out when you actually did the coding challenges itself?
The results of the coding challenges were significant. It was very insightful. You could clearly tell within, and of course, these code challenges were set up over an 8-hour period. So it was a significant challenge with a lot of data volume. And the reason we did that was because to work at USCIS in our environment, they're going to be looking at millions and millions of records. We needed them to have a problem statement that was reflective of that. So the results were very clear. You could clearly see which vendors were approaching it the right way, which vendors were really looking at, did you answer the problems? Or were they focused on, gosh, what should the design of it look like? And how pretty should it be? And what are the interfaces that we're using? And some of them couldn't even get their API to release. They couldn't get their CI/CD to work, or they had problems with the toolkit that they brought. And it was like, wow, you could clearly see those that got it and those that did not.
That's awesome. So you really could, that's really interesting. You could see who could do it, who couldn't. Now, do you think you would have learned that same type of information if you had asked for it in writing?
No, it would be impossible to see this in a paper-based process. The only way to see it paper-based would be to be at their office and watch them write the proposal. And I mean, we can literally see them writing the code. We can see them talking amongst each other. So we're watching not only the team dynamic, but we're also watching the code as it comes out. We're able to look at the test kits to see if there's test coverage on the code. So there's a lot that we can see. And the team was pretty large. Our evaluation team was 6 strong, which is pretty big for a technical evaluation team. But we needed all of them because each of them had specific skills in certain areas related to the code they were developing.
Okay, that's good to hear. Now, the PIL framework of testing and sharing is important, so we continuously improve how teams are doing these innovations. Now, looking back at this coding challenge, what's something that you learned about the process itself?
I learned that there's a lot more in the background to set these up than I realized that it had taken in the past. I think I probably would have done a shorter code challenge. 8 hours is a very long time. But we did it that way because we needed a large volume of data to reflect the true significance of this contract. The fraud detection contract was massive, and it was very important for us. The other thing I learned is I think it's important that we invoke some pass-fail pieces. I think if we'd had a point in that coding challenge where we said, you clearly don't get it, stop, good, have a great day, thank you for your time, and been a little bit shorter, we could have saved some time. There were a couple of vendors where we clearly could have stopped and not sat there for the full 8 hours.
Gotcha. Is there any quick final takeaways that you want to share with our anyone out there listening about, when they're looking to use coding challenges or innovation? Any quick takeaways that you want to share with anyone?
Yeah, I would definitely have your team do a dry run of your code challenge. So you developed your data sets, you developed your problem statements, you developed your toolkit, you set up your GitHub account, you set up your Amazon hosting account, load the data, run it yourself, have your team test it, prove that you can actually solve the problem. Because it'd be like a math teacher that gave a student a problem that couldn't answer the question. You'd get pretty mad if you knew there was no answer to the question. So it's really important that you test your data. And we did, in fact, with Finch, test it multiple times.
That's great to hear. Now, Chad, thank you so much for sharing this great story of how your team used coding challenges. Let us know what you think in the comments. Please like this video, share this video with your friends, subscribe to our channel, hit that notification button so you get all of our latest updates. Thanks for joining us, and see us next time.